tested for COVID?
No. I don't have any of this symptoms. I mean, I don't have shortness of breath.
Uh,
I just have like a cold, and so does my kid. But Layla was practicing American Ninja Warrior at the
right.
park on Friday after school. No, Thursday after school. And she went for the big, like, off the swings, came down, broke the tibia and the fibia. I think that's what they're called. So
Whoa.
she's like in a like precast kind of thing, and everything is like immobilized. But
Mm,
dude, this kid is a trooper, man. She didn't cry. She did like, it's just until they set her arm, she was just totally a G. It's amazing.
wow.
Kids have such resilience and such power, and I was just in awe of this child, man.
Yeah, that's crazy. American Ninja Warrior style. Well, yeah, I'm glad she's doing all right. So,
Yeah, it's positive. I mean, it's a positive experience. The Arabs have a really great saying. When something bad happens to you, they say, "Ta'ish wa ta'khud ghirha." I hope you live long and experience it again, or take another one. You know what I mean? Like,
really?
I hope that your life is so long that these things are always arising. Because once you don't
Mm,
have this, what is life?
right, right. Get boring, kind of.
What is life if it's not running to the park and just like seeing your kid in a stretcher with all these like, but bro, your people are beautiful, bro. The
That's
firemen are beautiful, bro. The EMTs and the fire people they're just so impressive on another level. They communicate so professionally, and so it's just, I'm always impressed, man. I'm always impressed. Shout out
good.
Huntington Beach Fire Department, Firehouse on Edwards. Yeah. Like, I this week I read this week, what did I, well, not this week, today's Monday. Why are we doing it on Monday? Because
Mm,
obviously nobody's watching these videos over the weekend. I read this
mm.
book, Bagman, by
Rachel
Rachel
Maddow.
Maddow. it's a
Yeah,
it's a
yeah, yeah.
it's a relatively new book, and in the epilogue there's this section on Spiro Agnew and King Fahd of Saudi Arabia, and kind of like they're going in cahoots on anti-Semitism. It's about Spiro Agnew taking envelopes of cash as bribes, and then eventually the government goes after him. I read this
Mm,
book, The Cult of
that
Trump.
sounds good.
Stephen Hassan, he used to be in the Moonies,
Mm,
Reverend Myung Sung Moon, and the cult that comes out of South Korea, and eventually he gets out of it, and he's basically he's a clinical, I don't know what, something that relates to psychology. He teaches at the Harvard Medical School. And this guy was a Moonie, came out of the cult, and he's basically explaining to you, like, what does the cult of Trump look like? And then what I'm right now digging into is this one, Masha Gessen's The
hmm.
Futures. I mean, this book is just ah. I mean,
Yeah, you've referenced it several times now.
bro, this is
I
like
gotta dive into it.
this is like her writing and her brilliant. It's we're dancing. I feel like I'm dancing, or I feel like I'm in her jazz quartet, and you're just kind of keeping up and like play. It's just so fun to read this
Hmm.
work. One of the ideas that I just held on to was, I guess in Soviet times, the windows of homes would be sealed for the winters because it's so cold. And so the
Right.
air inside of the house gets a little bit nasty over time. So there's like a small window inside of the window to open so that you can let air through without unsealing the house for the
Mm.
winter. And that thing is called a fortochka. I think that's how you pronounce it.
Uh,
And that idea for Tochka, she then applied to like the intellectuals and the musicians in the Soviet era who were very much like limited. And whenever they can get with the homies and just like, have a beer and play some music and talk about politics, that was like a fortochka of sorts, like an opening and
interesting.
a la brilliant dog. It's like you're dancing. It's so brilliant.
Hmm.
Love it. All right. I
Nice,
don't know why I
nice.
started like that, but I did.
No, that's cool. I read I started reading just like for fun, rereading Ray Bradbury's Fahrenheit 451.
Yeah.
Most people in the United States have to read it in high school. I went back and I started reading it the other night, but
Is that really a high school read now?
I read it when I was in high school.
Wow.
I think I was a sophomore English class. They required it, and I liked it at the time. And then rereading it now, it's like it's pretty great too. But yeah, he wrote it in like the span of 9 days in the basement of UCLA's Powell Library, which is pretty cool. I didn't know that, but I used to study there.
You used
So
to study there. I'm sure you did.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
So
That's
yeah,
awesome,
but
man. That's
good
really,
book.
really awesome. Oh no, office hours, but nobody signed up for why I don't office hours are crazy. All right, let's do it.
All right,
Whoa! Study volume 4. We're here. You ready?
the fourth one
Let's rock it.
and
Bro,
counting.
I feel like we're getting better at picking.
The
Little bit,
articles, yeah.
bro. Whenever I put something on this list, I feel like this mandatory. Like just to give you an
Mm-hmm.
example, this is maybe like no exaggeration. This is 15% of my reading for the week in terms of news and such.
Mm-hmm.
So we really are trying to like select those things that give us a unique insight into one or more of the complex aspects of mass violence and post-conflict resolution. Peace. Bro, I'm just looking at the tats, man. I'm just like, damn, this shit is so
Oh,
fire. I love it,
thanks.
dog. All right,
Yeah,
should,
I was gonna get some more this week, but we'll talk about that another time.
nah. He's like, yeah,
Yeah, yeah. So starting off with the New York Times, we have
hit me.
Venezuelan women lose access to contraception and control of their lives. Affordable birth control has disappeared, pushing many women into unplanned pregnancies at a time when they can barely feed the children they already have.
Good. So you one of the reasons this is important is because it shows the intersectionality of disadvantage, the intersectionality of oppression. We have a food shortage, we have no jobs, we have the highest rate of femicide in the region, in our region, as it relates to the rest of the world. And now we have a religious establishment or a popular belief that is further reducing the number of tools that we have to off ramp from poverty, abuse, oppression, even extremism, whatever. So the question of here in the United States, when we talk about um, a woman's right to opine on what is best for her own health care. Sometimes in the United States, it appears as just the issue of abortion or just the issue of contraception. But when you place it in a context that is more politically complex, you realize that that access, it is connected to your lack of access to a lot of other things, which now is a compounding of the oppression. So you're not just facing the oppression of not having access, but the symbolism, or not the symbolism, how that lack of access to contraception is a litmus test for what else is happening in your socio-political reality that is further causing your oppression. So I feel like it's a really, really good piece for us to study.
Yeah, and for those who are interested, the UN had their Global Engagement Summit, not this past weekend, but last weekend, and you could anybody interested could go in and they could watch all the workshops that they had, and they had one in particular about the UN's People's Fund's visit to Venezuela, uh, and they specifically go there to give like workshops on men, like reducing this tradition of like machismo, like to better, you know, just strengthen their own relationships, like marital relationships, or just like young women's how they're seen in their responsibilities and their own small communities. Really, really interesting.
And
So
that
check that
leads to
out.
the
It's free.
trafficking. That leads to the trafficking. That leads to all of that. That's a great. So that was last weekend, you're saying?
Yeah, last weekend. It's free to watch. You can watch it anytime, any of the videos. They have a bunch of them, but that one specifically, the UN's People Fund's trip to Venezuela. It's about like a
Awesome.
30-minute video. There's
Awesome.
discussions. It's interesting.
Look at here. It says in Caracas, the capital of Venezuela, 3 condoms cost
Mm.
$4.40. Ready? $4.40 for 3 condoms. The monthly minimum wage is $1.50.
Yeah, man. When
The
you have to make a
monthly minimum wage is $1.50, and a pack of 3 condoms is $4.50. So your sense of the intersectionality of topics that compounds oppression, and that's what we mean by systemic. What we mean by systemic is every time a person turns to attempt to find a solution to their reality, there is a block in goods and services that are available, healthcare that's available, education that's available, integration into society that's available, etc. All right, let's hit the next one.
next one. We have Al Jazeera. Let's see. Rage boils over amid Argentina's unrelenting femicide crisis. Femicide of 18-year-old Ursula Bajío pushed thousands into the streets of Buenos Aires this month to demand action.
Good. It was the murder of 18-year-old Ursula Bajío that pushed the women's movement into the streets on February 17th in numbers not seen since Argentina's Congress legalized elective abortion in December. Remember, last article was Venezuela. This article is Argentina. When was elective abortion legalized? Just last December. Bajío was killed in her hometown of Rojas in the province of Buenos Aires on February 8th. Her ex-boyfriend has been charged with femicide, and this is what happens everywhere. This is what's happening primarily throughout Latin America. I learned from my students early on as a college professor, men are afraid of being rejected, women are afraid of being killed. Two totally different planes. And Latin America right now, unfortunately, is the prime example of what happens when a woman tries to leave an abuser, a woman tries to go against her father's wishes, a woman tries to go get an education. What's going to happen? What's going to happen is you're going to get killed. And there's going to be impunity oftentimes because there is a level of corruption and a level of arms and a level of a lack of governmental control that a lot of things fly.
Yeah, and there's again, it's brought up in the article, this the culture of machismo. Same thing in Venezuela that the Argentinian president Fernandez has talked about. Having there's a cultural need to address machismo and what it means and what value it has, if any.
And of course, the machismo is just like what we use, the word that we use for that region. But like, ask any woman who's been to Egypt and walked the streets, she's going to tell you people are whistling, guys are talking, guys are trying to get my attention, guys are trying to do this, guys are trying, like, there are societies where there is a unique challenge with the ability of women to be free, to get on a bus, to go to work, to go to a gym, to get home, to go get a meal without being the object of an unwanted advance that in these societies of governmental corruption and cultural decay, sometimes we look the other way when these patterns arise as it relates to women. Remember, the number one arena for sexual assault in the United States of America is in the US military. The second, American universities.
All right.
Hit me.
Third article from the Washington Post. Diana Ortiz, nun who told of brutal abduction by Guatemalan military, dies at 62. Diana Ortiz, a slight Catholic nun from New Mexico, arrived in Guatemala in 1987 against a backdrop of devastating violence, a decades-long civil war pitting Marxist guerrillas against U.S.-backed military that would ultimately claim 200,000 lives.
Good. Eventually, she was abducted, gang raped, and tortured by the Guatemalan military. She was forced to defend her credibility as a U.S. Embassy official at point described her account as a hoax. The State Department eventually acknowledged that there was no reason not to believe her. Settling in Washington, Sister Ortiz became a prominent advocate of survivors of state sanctioned violence. Good. Many reasons to point to this story, many reasons to read this one carefully. One of them is to remember the role of the Catholic Church throughout Latin America in attempting to bring about a theology of liberation, what's called liberation theology, originally coined by the author Gustavo Gutierrez, who was a Catholic priest. And this was the idea that, hey, wait a minute, how come we don't have rights? How come we're not eating? How come we're not able to work while the folks who are above us in Rome seem to be living good lives? And the response always to those priests was, because God wants you to suffer. It's a part of your purification. It's a part of your faithfulness. And the priest said, well, what if we love God, but we don't suffer? Is that possible? Could we not suffer? Could we make that happen? So a liberation theology came to fruition. And that was the idea that the purpose of religion is to end poverty, to end hunger, to enhance people's freedoms, to enhance the human dignity of individuals. So why am I talking about that so much? Because my PhD dissertation was about taking those ideas and applying them to the reform of Islamic law. And that's where we get critical pedagogy. That's where we get a lot of Freire and those kinds of ideas. All right.
All right, very good. Washington Post, U.S. deports former Nazi guard whose wartime role was noted on card found amid sunken ship. 94-year-old dude.
Good. Remember, when we talk about situations of mass violence, when we talk about human rights violations like crimes against humanity, like mass rapes, like mass detention, like genocide, we're talking about the actions of human beings against other human beings. And a big part of our ability to apply international human rights law is a fact-finding and investigatory capacity that the international community has to be able to have in order to track people down and understand who they are and be able to reckon with who they are, etc. Now, this dude is saying, what are you talking about? I was 18 years old or 17 years old. I had no idea what I was doing. It's 60 years later, and now you want to. That's for somebody else to decide. That's not why I'm pointing to this article. Why I'm pointing to this article is, remember, whenever you study international law, one of the chapters is fact finding, evidence gathering, before you're able to take someone to trial. Think of it like discovery in a civil or criminal domestic case. There has to be a discovery process. And that discovery process might go as long as an article from last week about something that happened at the end of World War II. Good.
From the Hill, white Christian nationalism and the next wave of political violence.
Oh, dun, 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 dun. Okay. For those who are interested in what is happening on the Hill, what is that? The Senate and the Congress? You should read the Hill. Good. The Hill is a newspaper that's focused there. They also have an online kind of web, YouTube kind of presence. Very respectable center, basically, publication. This is an op-ed written by Rebecca Sager and Brie Lascota. Brie Lascota is a very good friend of mine. She leads at USC a center that for some reason my brain just blanked
Religion
on right
and
now.
Civic Culture.
My man, the Center for Religion and Civic Culture at USC. She's one of America's most impressive creators. I'm not going to use any social big words. I'm just creators, innovators, amazing human beings. All right. In this op-ed, Brie and her colleague explain that there is a connection between white supremacy and Christian nationalism. To understand how this happened, we must look back to how it all began, namely as a long-term Republican strategy to harness the most violent expressions of Christian nationalism for political gain. images such as a flag that said, Jesus is my savior, Trump is my president, seem new. But this mix of white, right wing identity politics and nationalist Christianity has been stirring for many years. And when I was at Gallup, there was data that indicated that evangelical Christian spaces tended to be places where, when you polled congregants, they have much. Okay, let me just say it as the data as I remember it. If you say that you attend church more than once a week, as an evangelical Christian, you were like this times more likely to say that like Islam is evil or these people are going to blow shit up, or I don't remember exactly the data, but there was like this relationship between, okay, so Bree, of course, is someone that defends faith, the role of faith communities, the role of interfaith engagement, the role of people who are faithful in solving society's problems. Like, this is not somebody who's against religion, right? Civic, like the study of civics and religion, or how religion relates to the civic space. And this is yet another piece of educated opining, data-based opining, that seems to indicate that there is a connection in that road of radicalization as it relates to white supremacy that connects in some contingent, tangential way to evangelical Christianity or right-wing Protestant Christianity. And actually, this book, The Cult of Trump, touches on that a number of different times, just like in very direct ways, naming very direct people who eventually, went from these organizations to the White House. So why are we pointing to it? We're pointing to it to show that there are ways to deal with data without being a hater, without offending communities, without generalizing. We're just trying to understand, like, where are the spaces where this kind of thing begins to come to fruition.
Some more interesting data comes from the University of Chicago's project on security and threats. Specifically, they've collected some data on the Capitol Hill insurrectionists who were arrested, 193 who were charged. And the Atlantic did a really interesting analysis too. There's a link on the same article. Really, really fascinating.
Yo, Robert Pape is one of these OGs of terrorism. Why are people terrorists? Why do people join terrorist organizations? Been in the game for a really long time at the University of Chicago. This basically is, as you just said, J-Rod, every single person that has been charged with something. What is their life about? And actually, I was sitting here enjoying my my coffee one time. Are you ready for this? 60% of them came from counties that Biden won. 89% of them have no connection to a hate group. 16% of them are business owners. 27% of them are white collar workers. The vast majority of those who were charged are gainfully employed. So, hey, if you want to know who's there, who would do this kind of a thing? There you go. Here's a study, University of Chicago, legit, best in the business. And they just tell you, look, here are the people, here's their situation, here's their. And remember, we've been through this before. Remember when people were saying, no, you become a terrorist because it's so poor, because the dictators don't give us food. And then Osama bin Laden, the Kim Kardashian of Saudi Arabia, became the number one terrorist in the world. Had nothing to do with his hunger, had nothing to do with his need for food. So we in every phenomena that we try to study, we will have hunches, we will have biases, we will have ideas as to what's really going on, and often we're wrong.
From the Washington Post, anti-Asian violence is surging, but we can't answer bigotry with bigotry, by Andrew Wang.
Okay, look, I just want to say something. I am not from this community. I don't know Andrew Wang. I don't know if this is some sort of like conservative take on this. I have flagged this to underscore the fact that no one talks about anti-Asian hate crimes, anti-Asian violence, anti-Asian bias that has come to fruition because of a president that said Wuhan virus and Chinese this and Chinese that and Chinese that, and most of the vast majority of the people who are on the bad end of these hate crimes that have been surging are Asian Americans in general. Remember that after 9/11, the first person that was killed in a hate crime was not a Muslim. He was a Sikh American who was wearing a turban, who was crossing a street, and some bro thought that he was a Muslim, and so he killed him. Uh, when we play with the fire of racism, like when we toy with the grenade of mass violence, it gets out of hand very, very quickly.
Yeah, only I like this quote at the very end. Only by rooting out our shared suffering can we protect the beauty, manifold lives of our loved ones. And this article kind of reminded me also of this. I think it was a piece from Vice News some years ago. I don't remember the names of the people, but there was an African American gentleman from the South who um, he did some investigative journalism into like the KKK, and he ended up meeting this guy who was like the Grand Wizard or something like that. And he would sit with him and he would talk with him, and at the end of the whole deal, the guy he hangs up his hood and he leaves the KKK, and he says that it's because this gentleman was able to allow him to see that that racism and prejudice really comes from fear, and fear is just a misunderstanding of something. And then once you come to understand what that person is, or who they actually are, not misrepresenting them as something else or that you think they are, then the fear is gone. And then when the fear is gone, there's nothing really to hate or to be scared about.
Bro, I gotta tell you the story. I'm not gonna name him. But when I was in law school, I moved into a house with a colleague of mine who had a boyfriend, then became her husband, from another state, come live with her. And when I moved into their house, this dude told me I had a basement apartment that was overlooking a graveyard. What graveyard? The Stonewall Jackson Cemetery. The Stonewall Jackson Cemetery graveyard. Okay.
Wow.
Basement apartment. I'm overlooking the Stonewall Jackson Cemetery graveyard apartment. It's like 2002, maybe, year after 9/11. This dude moves in and he goes, "Look, I don't like black people in my house because black people steal shit." We lived in the same house, dog. Like we use the same kitchen. You know what I mean?
Mm.
Today, that dude is one of my best friends. He's one of the wokest, like dopest people out there. And he's like just a champion of brilliant things. And I never really tried to change this dude's opinion, but just like living together and going through life together and eating together and just playing fuck cards together and shit. Literally, that dude is like my family. Like
So you
literally,
saw the transformation happen.
bro. Yeah, like boom.
Mm.
Like you could just see this dude, like who had not really left like their state or their county much.
Yeah.
You could just see his head just like exploding the more, and me too, right? Because I had just come off like the 9/11 thing, and I really wasn't like I was small town, Virginia, and I had to move into the dorms after 9/11, so this was my out from the dorms to be able to move back into society as an adult. Like, dude, I'm in law school. I don't want to live in a dorm.
Mm-hmm.
And this
Yeah,
dude,
that's interesting that it's a two-way street. For him, he didn't understand you. And then, I'm assuming for you, I'm sure you thought, why does he feel this way about me? And then you start to get to know these people, from both sides. And really, it's just the humanizing each other, going from this picture that we have of what the other person is or should be, or we've been told is supposed to be. And then you actually sit down, and then, you're right. It's the small little thing when you sit down and you eat together. You both laugh because you spilled some shit, and it's like all these things start chipping away at the image, and then underneath it you see, oh shit, it's a human being.
yeah, like obviously we're not advocating for like, oh, if we could all just get along, we'd all be friends,
Sure.
I would be no. But there's a lot to be said for I mean, it's a lot like swimming pools, dog. Like once you're in the pool for a minute, 2 minutes, it's not cold anymore. And human interaction is very similar. Like sometimes you need someone who loves you to just push you into the pool so that we can start playing as a family and not keep telling you, come on, jump into the pool. And when you have a relationship with someone who has a diametrically opposite lived experience, that's very much for a human being jumping into the pool and trying to get accustomed to the water.
Hmm.
So,
I'm gonna use that analogy. The
bro, I
pool.
love this conversation. I love it. I love doing this together.
Yeah. All right, let's see. Next one we got from the Washington Post. Another opinion here. The arrest of this activist should put India's democracy, quote unquote, title in question. Any government that would charge a 22-year-old climate and animal rights activist with sedition on the basis of a Google Doc cannot be readily described as a democracy. And they're referring to this 22-year-old woman, Disha Ravi.
When you argue for the Indian or the Chinese model of developing countries, you are arguing for an authoritarian model in which the citizen is seen as a hamper to an obstacle to the ability of the dictator and the dictating elite to be able to run their society. Many countries, many countries throughout the world are in the business of looking at what you're doing on social media, looking at how you're organizing on the phone, looking at how you're organizing on text messages. And it must be said, because it is not said enough, that India today, under the government of Narendra Modi, is not a free society. It is not a democratic society. It is not a society where minorities are thriving or minorities feel safe from persecution. Even if you are not among the minorities, if you challenge the authority of the government, even if you are 22 years old, simply for a Google Doc, you will be charged with sedition. I was watching a documentary the other day about Spain, and Spain has a rapper who is in prison because he said some I don't know what about the I don't know what, and then there's another dude that's now in another country, and Spain is
Mm-hmm.
like, and this dude was like, we're the only European country other than Russia that jails rappers. Or no, he said we're the only European country other than Turkey that jails rappers for what they have to say.
Right, right, right.
So Spain, of course, everything exists on a gradation, right? All the way, like from Eritrea, North Korea, all the
Mm.
way to societies where things are very, very, very free. You will find elements of human tendencies towards authoritarianism in all parts of the world.
And we'll include that video as well to that the rapper in Spain.
My man, I love it. I love it. I love it. I
Yeah.
love it. He's
Let's
good
see.
too.
Next from
I
Al
loved it.
Jazeera. I haven't listened to it. So I know what your video you're talking about, obviously, but
Oh, good.
yeah, I haven't listened to any of his music outside of the YouTube videos about
Yeah.
him. I think.
Yeah. Neither have I.
All right, let's see. Amnesty strips Navalny of prisoner of conscience status. Prominent rights group steps back from status, having reviewed the Kremlin foes' earlier hateful comments.
Really cool, right? Like we have in Burma right now, the people are on the street, they're arguing against the military coup of a government that is represented by Aung San Suu Kyi. She had the Nobel Peace Prize, was stripped of her, went to the International Court of Justice, argued against the fact that they are engaging in genocide, and now there's a coup. So the problem that we have is that there's two opposing teams in Myanmar, and both of them support a genocide. Let's take it to Russia. We have Navalny. Navalny has enough money to challenge Putin. He throws the drone up. He gets the video. He makes the movie of the palace that's being paid for by all the oligarchs. He does the flow charts. He gets poisoned, or it was the other way around. He got poisoned. He got out of it. He voluntarily went back to Russia, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Problem is, Navalny's got some statements that support white supremacy. He's got some statements that seem to be a little bit racist. He got some statements that seem to be a little bit misogynistic. And so you are faced with a great learning lesson for students of international law, which is Just because someone is abhorrent to you does not mean that they cannot be an agent of change. It does not mean that they cannot change. It does not mean that they cannot be a part of the future of a society. None of the Okay, let me be very careful here before I get canceled for this. I'm not all sidesing. I'm not all sidesing. There are people fighting for justice and there are people fighting for oppression. But it's infrequent to find protagonists who are perfect. It is infrequent to find. If you look in Armenia right now, the person who's leading the country, there are now protests for him to be removed, even though he was seen as like a good, honest man that was coming to take it from a dictatorship at one point in time. Like, it's very difficult to find a protagonist in politics who's perfect. So, do I support the fact that Navalny said racist shit? Of course not. But I still understand that he is, within the context of this society, an opposition figure to authoritarianism. And so I still have to like keep in my mind all of the complexity of the narratives. Never fall into the trap of thinking these are the good guys and those are the bad guys. Even though, yes, many situations there is a good guy and there is a bad guy, but good guys do bad things and bad guys do good things. And that's why this gets complex. Why would somebody in Ukraine want to be occupied by Russia? Because they're going to get a pension from the Russian government. Because the buildings are going to get rebuilt, the bridges are going to get rebuilt, the trash is going to start to get picked up. That's why you would choose to give away your freedom.
Yeah, it's difficult because I think a lot of Western media before has painted Navalny. Well, it's like it's always anti-Putin, anti-Putin. So because it's anti-Putin, you have to be pro-Navalny almost. So it's like, and same thing kind of in American politics too. Because you hate Trump, you have to like Biden. Not necessarily you don't have to love Biden, but it's like, well, certain things are going to change. But in this Russian example, he theoretically, I don't think he would be, coming to power Navalny, but if he would bring change, at what cost and what other things would come at the expense of, strengthened infrastructure or whatever with his past? Because people are now saying, oh, he's changed. Obviously his team is saying that. But would these things start bubbling out again? And then will they start having even more problems with, Islamophobia and all these things? So when there's not more people opposing Putin, it's like all you have is, just like I mentioned already in American politics, you have these two choices. And it's like, damn, now then we have to start putting up our moral values. Well, we'll take this, but we'll look the other way when it comes to this. And it's terrible that so many countries around the world and people have to do that, but I'll leave it at that. It's terrible.
It doesn't have to be that way. I mean, the challenge that you have is, again, there are no perfect protagonists. I'll never forget when we studied the book I, Rigoberta Menchú, when I was in college, about the fincas in Guatemala. And she wrote this amazing book about these women who are like being oppressed in the farm, and then they leave the farm, and then they go, and then eventually, like, we're studying the book the whole semester, and then at the end of the semester, the professor goes, by the way, I'll never forget, his name was Ken Stahl, Stahl, if you're out there, Cal Poly Pomona. He goes, well, she's been accused of exaggerating her account. And actually, she came out and said, yeah, this didn't really happen to me, but it happened to a lot of women that I know. And that's why I wrote the story the way I wrote it. And I remember being like devastated because I had developed such a strong connection to this character. And it took me like 2 or 3 weeks to begin to like have the complexity of understanding that allowed me to say, well, actually, this was probably kind of smart. Like, this is a really good way to tell the most important parts of the story. So somebody else will be like, yeah, she's a liar, don't believe her. We have to appreciate the way that because remember, Navalny is not one of two choices like there is here. This is a society that is attempting to create a reality where there's another choice,
Mm.
right? So all the only reason I put this is to say, remember, this is complex. This is not cartoons. This is not cowboys and Indians. It's not a board game. It's real life. And in real life, um, you have to play with the players that you have.
Moving along from the New York Times, Ethiopia's war leads to ethnic cleansing in Tigray region, U.S. reports say. An internal U.S. government report found that people in Tigray are being driven from their homes in a war begun by Ethiopia, an American ally, posing President Biden's first major test in Africa.
Good. Fighters and officials from the neighboring Amhara region of Ethiopia who entered Tigray in support of Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed are deliberately and efficiently rendering Western Tigray ethnically homogenous through the organized use of force and intimidation. Again, remember that is violation of international human rights law. Another story in which the protagonist, Abiy Ahmed of Ethiopia, was a reformer. He was young. His parents were both Muslim and Christian. He's going to bring the country back. He cuts all these deals. He brings peace. And then eventually gets pulled into the same old narrative of militias and regions. And of course, he's competing with Eritrea. Eritrea is the North Korea of Africa. And he finds himself now in a situation where those who are in cahoots with him politically are engaging in what is being charged as a type of ethnic cleansing. So the world is big. The world's really big. Like if I asked you to watch the Vice series on Ukraine as I did, it doesn't mean that we don't need to also know what's happening in Ethiopia and in Belarus and in China and in India and etc. It's a lot like exercising. If you keep the information flowing and you keep looking for those patterns in connection, you'll begin to have an appreciation for the differences as well.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yeah, the aspect of this article that's interesting to me, or this reality, is the use of hunger as a weapon, and as an aid group, as like as an NGO, or even as any kind of country who's trying to send food to these people. I don't I don't know. Can you help me out more on this, on you, just on like using hunger in general?
Yeah, there are many methods of ethnic cleansing that have been used over history. One of them is to make sure you have no food, you have no water. Another one is for us to arrest you and just make you walk until you die. We'll just walk and walk and walk and walk and walk and walk. This happened to the Armenians. It happened to Jews. It happened to many different societies. Another way is for us to kill all of you. Another way is like what we saw in World War II in the Gaza. Another way is bombing, what we now know is racist, what we used to call carpet bombing. Another way is like smallpox that happened to the indigenous in North America. So there are many ways of engaging in ethnic cleansing. One of the ways of doing it is denying refugees the ability to eat and drink.
Yeah, 21 people, it says, have starved to death in the eastern Tigray district of Golomakira. Today it could be 1, 2, or 3, but after a month it could be thousands. After 2 months it will be tens of thousands. This is the president of the Ethiopian Red Cross talking, Abura Tola, on hunger.
It's just I had high hopes for Abiy Ahmed. I hope that another thing that you should remember is like in the Tadic decision of the International Criminal Tribunal for former Yugoslavia, rape was determined to be an actus reus for genocide. Or maybe it was for crimes against humanity. I don't remember exactly, but it's not just denying you food and denying you whatever. It's not just killing you or shooting you, but even consistent mass rapes that are intended to do a series of things. Those are also sufficient for international law. So there are many ways that human rights violators engage.
All right, so finally we come to our video segment, our YouTube
Yeah, let's do
videos.
it.
We have two. The first one is from Vice News. It comes from 2019. It's titled China's Vanishing Muslims.
What's the
This
second one?
is the second one is why a rapper's arrest is causing riots in Spain. That's what
There it
we were kind of
is.
referring to earlier. Yeah.
Boom.
The first one though, the China's Vanishing Muslims one is eerie as it reads like like 1984 or just wild. But check it out. This English journalist, she goes to I forget the name of the region, Xinjiang, to see what's going on with the Uyghur people and just like try to talk to some people who are like actually willing to talk. And my God, it's just the level of surveillance. Like there's one scene where she goes into like to a bazaar, like a shopping bazaar, and she counts like 40 cameras in the ceiling, and
In like one
they
hallway. What
yeah,
about
in
the
one
scene
hallway
where it's
alone,
like dark at night and there's like 15 dudes that are
being marched
walking?
in silence, like to be arrested. Yeah, and like another one where she's just on the street, and there's like that volunteer police force like training civilians how to use those batons to like hit like Uyghur people if they were to have like a protest or something,
There you
and like
go.
literally yelling in like Mandarin, kill, kill,
Can you
kill. I mean, the
imagine?
whole thing is an incredible piece of journalism. Um, and then on top of this, I was listening to NPR yesterday when I was working out, and they had this really good piece on I always forget the name of the app, party
Oh,
something party, the
Clubhouse.
one you use, Clubhouse. Yeah, Clubhouse. And that Chinese Americans who live in the United States are using it to kind of start talking about how they feel about what's going on with the Uyghur people in China and things like that. And it's yeah, it's
Bro,
interesting.
technology, like this is genocide brought to you by plastic and Wi-Fi, right? Like technology and the role of technology in the role of the authoritarian state in oppressing and in the role of the oppressed in bringing about their own liberation. That's an amazing area of study. But yeah, what you're seeing is genocide. That's what genocide looks like. Oh, these dudes are in a camp. Oh, they're all fucking dressed in the same prison uniform and they're dancing and before they give them food, they have to praise the Chinese, I don't know
Mm.
what, and then you get you're shaving off their beards and doing this and doing that. So again, a great example, and then of why the Chinese model is not a great idea for societies. And then the second video, of course, the rapper from Spain, one of the
Pab-
dopest countries in the world.
Pablo Gesell, I think his name is
Uh-huh.
Gesell. Yeah, I gotta listen to his music.
And he basically was didn't say he didn't say go overthrow, he didn't say go bomb them, go kill them, nothing.
Hmm.
But he said something that somebody found some loophole and they went after him.
What's also interesting is the other rapper who's now living in Belgium,
That
who's like
guy.
his money. I mean, he's being funded by like the Belgium state or
Mhm.
people in Belgium, I think, to like
Uh-huh.
make music.
Uh-huh.
But he's pointing out the fact that like this Pablo Hasél guy is like he's kind of a nobody, and he doesn't say that as like a musical competitive thing. He just means he's like a young guy who doesn't have any real political agency or so what does that kind of say about us not being able to say these little things, as our system's so fragile that we cannot criticize and use while using art at the same time. Yeah, that's a quick video too. That's like 8 minutes.
Hey, till this day, I say, man, hip hop culture is one of the most beautiful things that have been created in the time that I lived on this earth.
If I could
see it everywhere.
Summarize hip hop into 3 words: fight the power.
Yeah, man. Yeah, man. That's
fight
it.
The power.
That's it. I love that. Oh, bro, that's the best way to end. It's my man. Fight the power. Yo, I was thinking, I'm gonna go with like the collar up for the rest of the day.
Nice, dude. Yeah, like a James Dean vibe.
I'm gonna have to feel that. Just gonna have to feel that.
Yeah, it's beautiful outside. I'm gonna go for a walk right now.
Enjoy it, J-Rod. Good to talk to you, my brother. Thanks for a great week.
Of course.
Much love. Peace.